Why am I so fucking weird at being on the internet? I don't even know. I just need to like get my shit together. Hey everybody, my name is Sam. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing my October wrap-up because it's November, so we should talk about all the books I read in October, right? Maybe. I ended up having a really good reading month last month, which I was not expecting at first because it got off to a super slow start, but by the end of the month I actually finished 12 books. I also, in the month of October, managed to finish the last of my Read Harder challenges, so it was pretty good. It was a pretty good month overall. Mostly not going to have these in any particular order. I think I'm just going to start with the ones that I don't have physical copies of because I don't want to forget them. Okay, so the first book I'm going to talk about is The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory, who is the same author that wrote The Wedding Date, which I read in July for a Read Harder challenge and wound up really loving. I gave it 5 stars. I raved about it. I'm not normally a huge fan of romance, but that book just like did something for me. And this book was a new release by the same author, so I picked it up. I actually pre-ordered the audiobook because apparently I'm that bitch now. But I listened to this in one day and I did still really enjoy it. I like the author's writing style. I generally enjoy her characters, but this one just didn't do as much for me as The Wedding Date did. I still really liked it though. I gave it 4 stars, just not as much as I liked the other one. This is very rambly already. Cool. I'm really good at videos now. All right, next book I'm going to talk about is Bad Monkeys by Matt Ruff, which was actually recommended to me by somebody in a Goodreads group that I'm a part of. And this was some of the weirdest shit I've ever read. Not in the same vein as like Beautiful Darkness, but just weird as in like a bunch of just off the wall stuff was going on. The best way I can describe it is it's like kind of a spy story, but kind of not. There were some sci-fi elements, there were some fantasy elements, there was some really weird shit going on, but it was also really comedic, and I wound up really enjoying it. I gave this book 4 stars. I read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, and this was my first Grady Hendrix book that I actually read, which is weird because I own We Sold Our Souls. I still haven't read that one, but I really liked Horror Store. It's about basically a haunted IKEA knockoff, and the company apparently that owns the knockoff IKEA company is based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So that was a fun tidbit because that's where I live, but I don't know, it was really fun. The whole setup of the book is, it's set up like a catalog, like an IKEA catalog, and it starts out with like the different types of furniture in the store, and then it slowly kind of turns into like torture devices as you get deeper into like the weird shit that's going on in the store. And it was a really fun book to read. I really liked the characters. I appreciated that it had comedic aspects. You guys know, because of how much I talk about David Wong, I fucking love horror comedy, and Grady Hendrix seems to do that really well. I gave Horror Store 4 stars. Next I have Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft, which is a short story, and this is the 3rd or 4th H.P. Lovecraft short story I've ever read, and honestly, I'm just not into Lovecraft. I really wish I was, because he's like a granddaddy of horror and sci-fi, but there's something about H.P. Lovecraft's writing style, and the whole thing just doesn't appeal to me. I haven't enjoyed any of it. His stuff doesn't strike me as particularly scary, and his writing style's a bit too, it's not flowery, but it's like almost poetic in nature, and it just like, I think it's supposed to make it more atmospheric, but it just kind of takes me out of it, and I just don't really enjoy it. I did enjoy Dagon more than I've enjoyed the other H.P. Lovecraft that I've read though, and I gave this one 3 stars, but it's like only just 3 stars. And then the last one that I have that I do not own a physical copy of is True Grit by Charles Portis, which I read for my final Read Harder challenge, which was to read a Western. And it was alright. It was pretty good. I really enjoyed that it has a female main character who's like honestly pretty badass, but it wasn't as engaging as I wanted it to be as a story. I think maybe again it's a writing style thing or something, but I did still enjoy reading it. I'm glad that I read it. I gave that one 3.5 stars. Throwing shit on the ground. Gonna take another drink. I purchased box wine over the weekend, so I've just been drinking wine on tap out of my fridge. All right, the first physical copy that I'm going to talk about is actually also the first book I read this month, and up until about the 20th was the only book I had completed in October. And that is another one of my pre-orders for the year, and that is Eliza, the Story of Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton by Margaret McNamara, Esme Shapiro, with an afterword by Philippa Soo, who played Eliza on Broadway. And this was really cute. I liked it a lot. This was, it's basically a fictional letter written by Eliza Hamilton to her grandchild. It kind of just recounts the story of her life, and it's just like a really nice nod to one of the strong women in American history that is now finally getting more recognition, but previously really didn't have that much. I really enjoy nonfiction as picture books. I just think it's a really nice way to present that information, and it's something like this is a really good way to get kids interested in history if you're a teacher or you have kids or something like that. Next, I'm going to talk about the books that I read for the Dewey's 24-hour readathon, which took place on the 20th. I also have a vlog from that day. If that's something you guys are interested in watching and you haven't yet, I will link it in the description or in the cards or somewhere within the confines of this video. First, I have The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss, which I really enjoyed. This is the story of Mary Jekyll, who is the daughter of Dr. Jekyll, and she's trying to solve a mystery. Her mother dies, and she starts kind of uncovering all of these secrets that her parents were hiding from her. And she ends up coming across this girl named Diana Hyde, who is another daughter of her father's that she never knew existed. She uncovers this secret society of scientists who are doing experiments on young women and trying to, like, essentially defeat death or, you know, things of that nature. And then she ends up coming across all of these other women who were experimented on, such as Justine Frankenstein and Catherine Moreau and Beatrice Rappaccini, who are all characters or versions of characters from other classic horror and science fiction stories. I liked this book a lot. The writing style, however, is probably not for everyone. They use the word monstrous in this book a lot, which didn't bother me, but I can definitely see why it might bother somebody, and it might have bothered me more if I hadn't actually listened to the bulk of this on audio. And there's also various like interjections throughout this book that kind of interrupt the narrative because it's presented in such a way that one of the characters is writing out their story, and it keeps getting interrupted by the other characters kind of bickering about what should be included and why. So if any of that sounds like it might bother you, kind of enter into this with a little more apprehension, but if you don't think it would bother you, I really recommend it. I gave this book 4 stars. That was long-winded. I didn't need to say all of that because I was feeling very nostalgic about some of those classic horror and sci-fi stories after I read that. I read Rappaccini's Daughter, which is a short story by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and it is one of my favorite short stories of all time. It's a classic science fiction story about a girl who tends poisonous plants and becomes poisonous herself, and the man who falls in love with her. And it's just really disturbing in ways that you don't necessarily think it would be, and it's just really good. I recommend it a lot. Again, 4 stars. Also, somebody asked for a plant-based sci-fi recommendations video. Would anybody else be interested in that? Because I could definitely make that happen for you guys. You know I love me some killer fucking plants. So let me know if that's something you'd want to see. Next for the readathon, I read Descender Volume 6 by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, and I don't need to talk about this series anymore, but will you all please just fucking read it because I love it so much. Every single volume in this series has been 5 stars, and that almost never happens from me with comics. This is the conclusion to the entire series, and just please read Descender. It's only 6 thin little books. Please read it. Please read it. Read it. Thanks. Next we have The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, which I have read like 135 times in my life, honestly. I don't even have an actual count of how many times I've read this book, but it's one of my favorites from middle school onward, or I don't even know how old I was the first time I read this book, maybe 9, maybe 11. It's hard to say, but I love this book so much. I love these characters. I love their little found family. I love the story. I love this book, and if you haven't read it, you should read it. Then I have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which I read this month because I was looking to read spooky books, and because come December, next month, I'm going to be discussing this with my friend Meg over at Tome Infinity, because we're going to be doing the live show for the Galactic Grimoire Book Club. I really enjoyed Frankenstein. I will say that of the classic horror I've read, Dracula's still my favorite, but I gave Frankenstein 4 stars. It's really an interesting look at what exactly it is that makes a monster. We'll talk about it more in the live show. And then finally, well, it's not the last book I read, but it's the last fucking book I'm gonna talk about, so whatever. I have Rat Queens, Volume 1, Sass and Sorcery by Curtis J. Wiebe, I don't know. But this is a fantasy comic series about these badass fucking women who all have very distinct, very different personalities. And they're just like a ragtag group of misfits going about their lives, causing shenanigans and mayhem. And it's just kind of about their misadventures, and right now they're kind of uncovering this whole big conspiracy. I really liked this a lot. 4 stars. That concludes my wrap up for the month of October 2018. This video was a fucking mess. You probably won't see that because I'm gonna edit out all of the times I had to repeat myself because I couldn't figure out how words worked, but trust me, it was a fucking mess. Let me know if you've read any of these, or if you'd like to read any of these, what you thought of them. Talk to me about random nonsense. Tell me a joke. Do what you gotta do. Just talk to me in the comments. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit subscribe. Find all my social media. Do all the shit that YouTubers tell you to do. You know how it works. Have a great day, guys. Bye.